The dust-laden wind carried a woman's desperate plea across the barren streets of Empire City, Nebraska. As Zara Ellis collapsed to her knees before a jeering crowd gathered outside the sheriff's office in the summer of 1876. Her crime standing up to the town's wealthiest businessman, when he forced himself upon her younger sister, had earned her a public punishment designed to strip away her dignity along with her most treasured feature. "Hold her still," demanded Mayor Hammond, his portly frame casting a shadow over Zara as two deputies pinned her arms. "This woman needs to learn that in Empire City, those who defy authority face consequences." Tears streamed down Zara's face as the cold metal of the shears touched the nape of her neck. Her chestnut hair had always been her pride, reaching past her waist, thick and lustrous even in the harsh prairie sun. Now it would become a trophy for a man whose power had corrupted his soul. She closed her eyes as the first long tress fell to the dusty ground. From the edge of the crowd, a tall figure watched with mounting disgust. Darius Jackson had only arrived in Empire City 3 days prior, trailing a herd of cattle from Texas with plans to move further north. The 28-year-old cowboy had seen his share of frontier justice, but this display of cruelty against a defenseless woman made his blood boil. "This ain't justice," he muttered, hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. The cowboy next to him, an older man with a weather-beaten face, placed a cautionary hand on Darius's arm. "That's Hammond's doing. Man owns half the businesses in town and the sheriff's loyalty. Best not to interfere if you plan on keeping your scalp." But Darius couldn't stand by. As the mayor grabbed another fistful of Zara's hair, Darius pushed forward through the crowd, his tall frame and determined stride parting onlookers like water. "That's enough," his deep voice rang out, silencing the murmurs of the crowd. Every head turned, including Zara's. Her tear-stained face looked up at the stranger who dared to challenge her tormentor. Mayor Hammond paused, scissors held mid-air. "This isn't your concern, cowboy. Move along." Darius stood his ground, boots planted firmly in the dirt. "I reckon public humiliation isn't how decent folks handle disputes." "This woman interfered with private business matters," Hammond sneered. "She needs to understand her place." "Her place?" Darius's voice remained calm, though his eyes burned with quiet fury. "Seems to me a man who'd shame a woman in public has forgotten his own place." The crowd grew tense. The sheriff stepped forward, hand on his holster. "You're new in town, stranger. I suggest you move on before you find yourself in a cell." Darius didn't budge. Instead, he addressed Zara directly for the first time. "Madam, are you willing to leave with me right now?" Zara stared up at him, confusion mingling with a desperate hope. Half her hair now lay in the dirt around her, the remaining portion unevenly shorn at different lengths. She looked from Darius to Hammond, then to the angry faces of the crowd. "Yes," she whispered, voice barely audible. In one swift motion, Darius stepped forward, placing himself between Zara and her tormentors. He extended his hand, helping her to her feet. The crowd murmured in disapproval. "You can't just interfere with town business," the sheriff growled, drawing his pistol. Darius kept his voice steady. "I don't see town business. I see a mob against one woman. That ain't right, no matter how you dress it up." He turned to address the gathering. "Any of you with a conscience might want to consider whether you're standing on the right side here." A few townspeople shuffled uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. Others glared defiantly. "You'll regret this," Hammond hissed. "No one crosses me in Empire City." Darius gently guided Zara toward his horse tethered nearby. "Your beauty could never be dimmed," he said quietly to her, loud enough only for her ears. "Hair grows back, spirit's harder to restore once it's broken." Zara looked up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. You don't understand what you're doing. They'll come after you after us. Let them try. Darius helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her. I've faced worse than small-town bullies. As they rode away from Empire City, Zara clutched the remnants of her hair, the weight of her humiliation still heavy upon her shoulders. She didn't know this man, this cowboy who'd intervened on her behalf. But for the first time in months, she felt something other than fear and despair, a tiny flicker of hope, fragile as a prairie flower after the first spring rain. The setting sun cast long shadows as they rode east, away from town. After an hour of silence, Darius finally spoke. I've got a camp set up by the creek 2 miles ahead. You'll be safe there tonight while we figure things out. Why did you help me? Zara asked, her voice still raw from crying. Darius considered his answer carefully. My ma taught me that standing by when wrong is being done makes you just as guilty as those doing wrong. He paused. And no one deserves to be treated that way, no matter what they've done. Zara touched her shorn hair self-consciously. I look like a freak. No, madam. You look like someone who stood her ground, Darius replied. That's rare enough these days to be admired. When they reached his campsite, Darius helped her dismount. The camp was simple but well organized, a small tent, a neatly arranged fire pit, and supplies carefully stowed under a tarpaulin. It's not much, he said, lighting the fire, but it's dry and safe. Zara sat on a log near the growing flames, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to tell you why they did this to me. You deserve to know what trouble you've brought upon yourself. Darius added more kindling to the fire. Only if you want to share it. Zara took a deep breath. My sister Abigail works as a maid in Hammond's home. She's just 18. 3 days ago she came to me in tears, saying Hammond had forced himself on her. Her voice trembled with rage. When I confronted him, he denied everything, claimed she was making stories up for attention. And the town believed him, Darius said. It wasn't a question. He owns the bank, the general store, and holds the mortgages on half the farms around here. People are afraid. Zara stared into the flames. I threatened to write to the territorial governor. That's when Hammond had me arrested for slander and decided to make an example of me. Darius handed her a tin cup of coffee. Where's your sister now? With our neighbor, Mrs. Whitley. She promised to keep Abigail safe until I returned. Zara's voice broke. But I can't return now, can I? Hammond will only finish what he started. No, Darius agreed. Empire City isn't safe for either of you anymore. They fell silent as night descended fully around them. Crickets chirped in the tall grass, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its pack. I'm heading to Wyoming territory, Darius finally said. Got family there starting a new ranch. You and your sister could come along, at least until you figure out your next move. Zara studied him in the firelight. At 24, she'd learned to be wary of men offering help. Such assistance usually came with unspoken expectations. But something about Darius's straightforward manner made her want to trust him. Why would you do that for strangers? She asked. Because it's the right thing, he said simply. And because I've seen what happens to folks left vulnerable on the frontier. He poked at the fire. My sister was in a similar situation once. Somebody helped her when I couldn't be there. I'm just passing that kindness forward. Zara felt tears threatening again. We need to get Abigail first. I won't leave without her. Darius nodded. We'll go at dawn, not into town directly, too risky. Is there a way your neighbor could bring her to meet us somewhere? There's an abandoned homestead about a mile east of town. Mrs. Whitley knows it. Zara's mind raced ahead. But how would I get word to her? I'll go, Darius decided. I can slip into town before sunrise, deliver a message, and be back before anyone's the wiser. Zara shook her head vehemently. It's too dangerous. Hammond has men watching everywhere. I didn't survive 3 cattle drives and 2 Indian attacks by being careless, Darius said with a slight smile. Besides, they're looking for a woman with short hair and a tall cowboy together. One man alone won't draw as much attention. Zara wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was overtaking her. The events of the day, the public humiliation, the rescue, the escape had drained her completely. Darius noticed her eyelids drooping. "Get some rest," he said gently. "You can take the tent. I'll keep watch." "Thank you," Zara whispered, too tired to protest. "I don't even know your full name." "Darius Jackson," he replied. "Originally from Texas, most recently from nowhere in particular." "Zara Ellis," she said, extending her hand formally despite the circumstances. "Until today, a seamstress in Empire City." Darius took her hand briefly. "Well, Miss Ellis, tomorrow we'll get your sister and then we'll figure out the rest." As Zara disappeared into the tent, Darius sat back against a tree trunk, rifle across his lap. He wondered briefly what had possessed him to intervene so dramatically in a stranger's affairs. It wasn't like him to draw attention, especially not in a town he was just passing through. But the memory of Zara kneeling in the dirt, dignity intact even as they tried to strip it from her, had awakened something in him, a certainty that some lines shouldn't be crossed. Some injustices couldn't be ignored, no matter the personal cost. Dawn broke with a thin mist hugging the ground. Darius had dozed intermittently through the night, always alert for the sound of approaching riders. He roused Zara gently. "I need to go now if I'm going to reach town and back before full light," he explained, handing her his spare revolver. "Do you know how to use this?" Zara took the weapon with comfortable familiarity. "My father taught me before he died. I'm a decent shot." Darius looked impressed. "Good. If anyone but me approaches camp, don't hesitate." "I won't," she promised. "What should I tell Abigail in the note?" Darius provided paper and pencil from his saddlebags. "Tell her to meet us at that abandoned homestead at noon. Tell her to bring only what she can carry easily." Zara penned a quick note, folded it tightly, and handed it to Darius. "Mrs. Whitley lives in the blue house behind the church. She's usually up before sunrise to tend her chickens." Darius tucked the note inside his vest. "I'll be back as quick as I can. Stay hidden." He mounted his horse and disappeared into the lingering darkness, leaving Zara alone with her thoughts and the loaded revolver resting in her lap. The ride to Empire City took less time than expected. The town was still sleeping when Darius approached from the east, tethering his horse in a stand of cottonwoods at the outskirts. He moved on foot through backyards and alleyways, keeping to shadows. The blue house was easy to spot in the gray pre-dawn light. As Zara had predicted, a woman was already in the yard, scattering feed for a cluster of hungry chickens. "Mrs. Whitley," Darius whispered from behind the woodshed. The woman startled, hand flying to her throat. "Who's there?" "A friend of Zara Ellis. I have a message from her." Mrs. Whitley's eyes darted nervously toward her house, then back to Darius. "She's safe. We heard terrible things yesterday." "She's safe," Darius confirmed, extending the folded note. "This is for her sister, Mrs." Whitley snatched the paper and quickly tucked it into her apron pocket. "The poor girl hasn't stopped crying since they dragged Zara away. What Hammond did was monstrous. Which is why we need to get both women away from here," Darius said. "Will you help?" The older woman squared her shoulders. "Of course I will. That man's terrorized folks around here long enough." She lowered her voice further. "You should know there's talk in town. Hammond's offered $50 to anyone who brings Zara back. He's saying she stole from him." Darius wasn't surprised. "Can you get Abigail to the meeting place without being followed? My son will help." He despises Hammond as much as anyone with sense does. Mrs. Whitley suddenly tensed, hearing something Darius couldn't. "Someone's coming. You need to go." Darius melted back into the shadows just as another woman emerged from the house. He made his way back through town as silently as he'd come, narrowly avoiding an early-rising shopkeeper and a deputy making morning rounds. The sun was just cresting the horizon when he returned to camp. Zara stood at his approach, relief washing over her face. "You made it," she breathed. "Any trouble?" "None." Darius dismounted. "Mrs. Whitley got your note. She said she and her son will help Abigail reach the meeting place." He hesitated. "Hammond's put a bounty on you claiming theft." Zara's face hardened. "Of course he has. The man can't stand losing control." "We should move camp," Darius suggested. "Get closer to the meeting place but stay hidden." They packed quickly, erasing all signs of their presence. As they rode, Darius noticed Zara repeatedly touching her uneven hair, a pained expression crossing her face each time. "I could even it out for you," he offered during a brief stop to water the horses. "My mother was ill for years. I learned to cut her hair when she couldn't manage it herself." Zara looked surprised at the offer, then nodded gratefully. "It can't look worse than it does now." Using his hunting knife, freshly honed on a whetstone, Darius carefully trimmed the jagged ends. His hands moved with unexpected gentleness for a man accustomed to breaking horses and wrestling steers. "There," he said finally, stepping back to assess his work. "It's short, but at least it's even now." Zara ran her fingers through what remained of her hair, now cropped close to her head, shorter than most men wore theirs. To her surprise, the neat cut felt liberating rather than shameful. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes steadily for the first time. "Not just for this, but for everything." Darius nodded, suddenly finding himself unable to look away from her face. Without the distraction of her long hair, her features were striking: high cheekbones, determined jaw, and eyes the color of summer sage. "We should keep moving," he said after a moment, turning away to gather their supplies. By mid-morning, they'd reached the vicinity of the abandoned homestead, a dilapidated cabin with a partially collapsed roof standing alone in a sea of tall grass. They concealed themselves in a nearby copse of trees, watching for any sign of movement. What if Hammond's men found the note? Zara worried aloud as the appointed hour approached. "What if they've taken Abigail?" "Don't borrow trouble," Darius advised, though he shared her concerns. Mrs. Whitley seemed capable. At 1:15 they spotted two figures approaching on foot from the direction of town, a young woman and a teenage boy, moving cautiously through the high grass. "It's them," Zara whispered, recognizing her sister's distinctive gait. "That's Mrs. Whitley's son with her." Darius surveyed the surrounding landscape carefully. "I don't see anyone following, but stay alert. I'll go meet them." He approached openly, making sure they could see him well before he reached them. The girl, clearly Zara's sister with the same striking eyes, shrank back until Zara emerged from hiding and ran toward her. "Abigail," Zara called, embracing her sister fiercely. "Your hair," Abigail gasped, touching Zara's shorn head with trembling fingers. "They really did it." "I heard, but I didn't want to believe." "It's just hair," Zara said firmly. "What matters is that you're safe." The boy, who introduced himself as Thomas Whitley, handed Darius a small bundle. "Ma sent these food and some basic supplies. She said to tell you to head north. Hammond's got men watching the main roads east and west." "Smart woman," Darius acknowledged. "Any other news we should know?" Thomas nodded grimly. "Sheriff's deputized 6 men specifically to search for you, and there's talk Hammond might bring in Pinkerton agents if they don't find you soon." Zara paled. "All this because we dared to speak the truth." "Men like Hammond can't abide the truth," Thomas said with wisdom beyond his 15 years. It threatens everything they've built. They said their goodbyes quickly, with Abigail tearfully thanking Thomas and his mother for their help. As Thomas headed back toward town, Darius helped Abigail onto his horse. "We'll need another mount soon," he observed. "My horse can't carry 3 indefinitely." "Where exactly are we going?" Abigail asked, her voice small and frightened. Darius glanced at Zara, who now sat behind her sister. "Wyoming territory. I have family starting a ranch near the Big Horn Mountains. It's a long journey, but you'll be beyond Hammond's reach there." They traveled hard for the remainder of the day, keeping to ravines and wooded areas whenever possible to avoid being silhouetted against the horizon. By nightfall, they'd covered nearly 20 miles, putting welcome distance between themselves and Empire City. That night, camped in a sheltered gully, Abigail finally shared the full extent of what had happened at the Hammond house. Her voice quavered as she described how the mayor had cornered her in an upstairs room while his wife was visiting relatives. "He said no one would believe me if I told," she whispered, "that he'd make sure I never worked in Empire City again." Zara held her sister's hand tightly. "I believed you. I'll always believe you." Darius maintained a respectful distance during their conversation, tending the small fire and keeping watch. But his jaw tightened visibly at Abigail's story, his fingers rhythmically clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Men like that don't change," he said finally. "But they can be avoided. Wyoming's still wild country, but the people are generally decent. Hard work and honesty mean more than money or position." "What will we do there?" Zara asked. "Neither of us has ever been outside Nebraska. My cousin Daniel has a growing operation. They're always looking for help cooking, sewing, general household management. 2 capable women would be welcome." Darius hesitated. "At least until you decide what you want long term." Abigail looked doubtful. "What if they don't want us?" "They will," Darius said with certainty. "Daniel's wife Ella is expecting their 3rd child. She's been asking for help since before I left Texas." As they settled in for the night, Zara found herself studying Darius covertly. In the firelight, his features were sharp, strong jawline shadowed with several days' growth, eyes deep-set and watchful. He wasn't classically handsome, but there was something compelling about his face, a steadiness that spoke of inner strength. "Why aren't you married?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Darius looked up, clearly surprised. "Never found the right reason, I suppose." "Most men don't need much reason beyond convenience," Zara observed. "I'm not most men." His reply was simple but carried weight. "My parents had a real partnership. Anything less would feel like settling." The conversation lapsed into comfortable silence. Later, as Abigail slept soundly nearby, Zara approached Darius, who sat keeping first watch. "I need you to be honest with me," she said quietly. "Are we going to make it to Wyoming?" Darius considered her question seriously. "It won't be easy. We've got nearly 400 miles ahead, limited supplies, and possibly men on our trail. But yes, I believe we will." "How can you be so certain?" "Because giving up isn't an option." He looked at her directly. "And because I've made a promise to see you both safely there. I don't break promises." Something in his tone, absolute and uncompromising, made Zara believe him. For the first time since her confrontation with Hammond, she felt the knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. "Get some sleep," Darius said gently. "Tomorrow will be another long day." The following morning brought their first significant challenge. While filling canteens at a small stream, they spotted dust on the horizon, riders moving rapidly in their direction. "Could be anyone," Darius said, though his expression betrayed his concern. "But we can't take chances." They quickly doused their small breakfast fire and mounted up, heading toward a line of hills to the northeast. The extra weight on his horse was slowing them considerably, and Darius kept glancing back at the approaching dust cloud. "They're gaining," Zara observed tensely. Darius nodded grimly. "We need to split up. It's our only chance." "No," both sisters protested simultaneously. "Listen to me," Darius said firmly. "I'll continue north, making an obvious trail. They'll follow me. You two head east through that ravine. There's a settlement called Preston about 15 miles that way. Find the livery stable and ask for a man named Everett. Tell him Darius Jackson sent you and that I need a favor." "We can't leave you to face them alone," Zara argued. "I'm not planning to face them," Darius replied. "I'm planning to outrun them, then circle back. Everett will hide you until I return." Abigail looked terrified at the prospect of separation. "How will you find us?" "Everett owns the only livery in Preston. It won't be hard." Darius was already helping them dismount. "Take the supplies. I'll travel faster without them." Zara gripped his arm. "If you don't come back." "I will," he interrupted. "But if something goes wrong, Everett can arrange passage to Wyoming for you. He owes me from way back." Before Zara could protest further, Darius handed her the reins. "Go now. Stay in the ravine as much as possible." With that, he spurred his horse northward, creating a clearly visible trail through the tall grass. Zara watched him go, heart pounding with fear and something else she wasn't ready to name. "Come on," she said to Abigail, shouldering their meager supplies. "We need to move." The journey to Preston was grueling on foot. The July sun beat down mercilessly as they trudged through the ravine, stopping only briefly to rest in whatever shade they could find. Abigail, less accustomed to physical hardship than her older sister, struggled to keep pace. "Just a little further," Zara encouraged, though in truth she had no idea how much distance remained. "We'll rest properly when we reach town." By late afternoon, both women were stumbling with exhaustion. Then, just as Zara was considering finding shelter for the night, they crested a small rise and saw Preston spread out below them, a modest collection of buildings clustered around a dusty main street. "Thank God," Abigail breathed. "Civilization." They approached cautiously, aware that news of their escape might have reached this far. The town appeared peaceful enough, a few wagons parked outside the general store, a blacksmith hammering at his forge, children playing near the small schoolhouse. The livery stable wasn't hard to find, occupying a large lot at the eastern edge of town. As they approached, a stocky man in his 50s emerged, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. "Help you ladies," he called. Zara stepped forward. "Are you Everett?" The man's friendly expression shifted to wariness. "Depends who's asking." "Darius Jackson sent us," Zara said quietly. "He said you owe him a favor." Everett's bushy eyebrows shot up. "Darius, you say? Ain't seen that boy in years." He studied them more carefully. "Where is he?" "Creating a diversion," Zara explained. "Men were following us. He led them away so we could reach you safely." Everett cursed under his breath. "That sounds like him always playing the hero." He glanced around, then gestured for them to follow him inside. "Come on, then. Any friend of Darius is welcome here." The interior of the stable was cool and smelled of hay and horses. Everett led them through to a small office at the back, then up a narrow staircase to living quarters above. "My wife's visiting her sister in Council Bluffs," he explained. "You can use our spare room until Darius shows up." "Thank you," Zara said sincerely. "I don't know how we can repay your kindness." Everett waved away her gratitude. "Ain't kindness. Like I said, I owe Darius. Man saved my business and probably my life back in '71 during that bank robbery." He eyed their disheveled appearance. "You two look like you could use some food and rest. I'll see what I can rustle up." After Everett left to prepare a meal, Abigail collapsed onto one of the narrow beds. "Do you think he made it? Darius, I mean." Zara sat beside her sister, stroking her hair comfortingly. "I do. He strikes me as a man who knows how to take care of himself." "He's risking so much for us strangers," Abigail marveled. "Why would he do that?" "Because it's the right thing," Zara replied, echoing Darius's words from their first night together. "Some people still believe in that, it seems." Later, after washing up with water from the basin Everett provided and eating a simple but filling stew, the sisters sat by the window overlooking the stable yard, watching for any sign of Darius. "What if those men caught him?" Abigail whispered. "What if Hammond's men took him back to Empire City?" "Don't think that way," Zara said firmly, though the same fears had been plaguing her. "Darius is smart and resourceful. He'll find a way back to us." As darkness fell, their anxiety grew. Everett brought them extra blankets and assured them that his stable hands had been instructed to alert him immediately if Darius arrived, no matter the hour. "Try to get some sleep," the older man advised. "Worrying won't bring him back any faster." But sleep proved elusive for Zara. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Darius riding away, drawing danger to himself to protect them. The realization of how quickly he'd become important to her was unsettling. Just past midnight, she heard the soft nickering of horses below, followed by hushed voices. Zara rushed to the window, peering into the darkness. A figure was dismounting in the stable yard, moving with the fluid grace she'd come to associate with Darius. Without waking Abigail, she hurried downstairs, nearly colliding with Everett in the hallway. "It's him," the stable owner confirmed, lighting a lantern. "Looks like he brought company, too." When they reached the yard, Zara saw that Darius wasn't alone. A second rider had accompanied him, a young man with a badge pinned to his vest. "Zara," Darius called softly when he saw her. Despite evident exhaustion, his face brightened. "You made it safely." She rushed forward, surprising herself by throwing her arms around him. "We've been so worried. Are you hurt?" "Just tired," he assured her, returning the embrace briefly before stepping back. "This is Deputy Marshal Caleb Foster from the Territorial Office. He's been tracking Hammond for months on corruption charges." The deputy tipped his hat. "Madam, your sister's testimony could be very helpful in our case against Mayor Hammond." Zara looked from the lawman to Darius, confusion evident. "I don't understand. How did you two connect?" Darius guided her toward the stable as Everett took charge of the horses. "Those riders who were following us. They weren't Hammond's men, they were Marshal Foster and his deputies. When they approached me, I nearly shot first and asked questions later." "Fortunate for all of us that he didn't," the deputy remarked dryly. "We've had Hammond under investigation for nearly a year: land fraud, extortion, bribing officials. Your situation might finally give us the leverage we need." "What does that mean for us?" Zara asked warily. "It means," Darius said gently, "that you might have a choice now. If you and Abigail are willing to testify, Hammond could face serious charges." Zara processed this information slowly. "And if Hammond is arrested, we could potentially go home." Darius nodded. "If that's what you want." Something in his tone made Zara look at him more closely. "And what about you? Would you still go to Wyoming?" "That was always my plan," he said carefully. "My family's expecting me." An awkward silence fell between them, broken only when Everett reappeared. "Got the horses settled," he announced. "Now, how about we all get some rest? Sounds like you've got important decisions to make come morning." The following day brought intense discussion. Abigail was initially terrified at the prospect of testifying against Hammond, but Deputy Foster assured her that she wouldn't have to face the mayor directly. "The territorial governor has agreed to convene a special hearing," he explained. Your written testimony would be sufficient in the first instance. And Hammond would truly face consequences, Zara pressed. He wouldn't simply buy his way out of trouble, not this time, Foster promised. We have evidence of at least 12 separate criminal acts. Your testimonies would simply strengthen an already solid case. Darius remained unusually quiet throughout these discussions, offering support but little personal input. It was only when the sisters had agreed to return to the territorial capital with Foster that he finally spoke up. "I'll escort you," he said. "To make sure you arrive safely," Foster frowned. "That's not necessary. My deputies—" "It wasn't a question," Darius interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "I started this journey with them. I'll see it through." That night, while Abigail slept and Deputy Foster made arrangements for their departure the following day, Zara found Darius alone in Everett's small garden behind the stable. "You've been quiet," she observed. Sitting beside him on a weathered bench, Darius nodded. "Just thinking. About how quickly plans can change," he admitted. "When I left Texas, I thought I knew exactly where I was headed and why. Now you're not sure," Zara prompted when he didn't continue. Darius turned to face her, his expression unusually vulnerable in the moonlight. "I'm not sure about a lot of things anymore, but I am sure that meeting you has changed something in me, Zara. I just don't know what to do about that." Zara's heart quickened. "What do you want to do about it?" "That depends," he said softly, "on what you plan to do once Hammond is dealt with." "Will you rebuild in Empire City?" The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Zara considered carefully before answering. "I don't think so," she said finally. "Too many painful memories there now. Abigail certainly couldn't return, not with those rumors Hammond spread about her." "Where would you go?" His question was quiet, almost tentative. Zara took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I was thinking Wyoming might offer new opportunities. I hear they need skilled seamstresses in growing settlements." Darius's expression transformed, hope kindling in his eyes. "It's rough country, not what you're used to." "I'm tougher than I look," Zara replied, unconsciously touching her short hair. "Recent events have proved that, I think." "Yes," Darius agreed, reaching out to lightly trace the line of her jaw. "They have." The journey to Lincoln, the territorial capital, took 3 days of hard riding. Deputy Foster's presence ensured they were received respectfully at each stop along the way. Darius remained vigilant throughout, his protective instincts seemingly heightened rather than diminished by the lawman's presence. At the territorial offices, Zara and Abigail provided detailed statements about Hammond's actions. The process was emotionally draining, particularly for Abigail, who had to recount the assault in clinical detail. Zara remained at her sister's side throughout, drawing strength from Darius's steady presence nearby. "You were both very brave today," he told them afterward as they sat in the hotel dining room, the formal statements completed and notarized. "What happens now?" Abigail asked Deputy Foster. "The governor has issued a warrant for Hammond's arrest," the lawman explained. "My men should be taking him into custody as we speak. There will be a formal hearing next month, but with the evidence we've compiled, I expect him to face prison time." Relief washed over Zara's face. "So it's over. We're truly free of him." "You are," Foster confirmed. "And the governor asked me to convey his personal apologies for what you endured. He's authorized a small compensation for the public humiliation you suffered." Zara touched her short hair, which had begun to grow out slightly, curling around her ears. "No amount of money can restore what was taken, but the apology is appreciated." Later that evening, as they prepared to retire to their rooms, Darius approached Zara in the hotel corridor. "I received a telegram from my cousin today," he said. "They're expecting me in Wyoming within the month." Zara's stomach nodded with apprehension. "You're leaving then?" "I'm continuing my journey, yes." He hesitated. "The offer still stands for both of you to come along." "As employees of your cousin's ranch?" Zara asked carefully. Darius took a step closer. "That would be one possibility." His voice dropped lower. "But I had hoped. That is, I've been thinking." It was so unlike him to be at a loss for words that Zara found herself smiling. "Darius Jackson, are you trying to court me?" The directness of her question startled a laugh from him. "I'm making a poor job of it, it seems." "I don't know," Zara mused, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "Rescuing a woman from public humiliation, risking your life to protect her and her sister, offering a new start in a new territory. As courtships go, it's rather impressive." Darius's expression grew serious. "I know it's fast, we barely know each other, but sometimes life doesn't give you the luxury of time. Sometimes you just know." "Know what?" Zara whispered, though she already understood. "That you found someone worth changing your plans for." He took her hands in his. "I'm not asking for promises. Just a chance to see if what I feel might be something you could feel too, given time." Zara looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face. "When I lost my hair when they were cutting it away in front of everyone, I felt stripped of everything. My dignity, my identity, my place in the world." Darius's hands tightened around hers, but he remained silent, letting her speak. "Then you appeared," she continued, "and you looked at me like I was still whole, still worthy. You said my beauty could never be dimmed, even when I felt completely diminished." "I meant it," Darius said softly. "What they took was just hair. Who you are, your courage, your loyalty to your sister, your spirit, that's where true beauty lies." Zara stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. "I don't need more time, Darius. I already know." The kiss that followed was gentle at first, a tentative exploration. Then Zara's arms wound around his neck and Darius pulled her closer, the kiss deepening into something that held both promise and certainty. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Darius rested his forehead against hers. "So, Wyoming," Zara smiled. "Wyoming. But first, I need to make sure Abigail is comfortable with the plan." As it turned out, Abigail was more than comfortable with it. "I've been watching you too," she confessed when Zara broached the subject the next morning. "I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at him." "Is it that obvious?" Zara asked, embarrassed. "Only to someone who knows you well," Abigail assured her. "And for what it's worth, he looks at you the same way, like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." 2 weeks later, they departed for Wyoming territory. The journey was arduous, but far less tense than their initial flight from Empire City. Deputy Foster had provided them with official documentation confirming Hammond's arrest and the dismissal of all charges against Zara, ensuring they encountered no legal difficulties along the way. As they traveled, the landscape gradually transformed, the flat Nebraska plains giving way to rolling hills, then the more dramatic terrain of eastern Wyoming. Zara found herself entranced by the wild beauty of the country, so different from anything she'd known before. "It's like the land itself is untamed," she remarked one evening as they made camp in the shadow of a dramatic rock formation. "Free in a way that makes me feel free too." Darius smiled, understanding perfectly. "That's why I've always been drawn to these territories. There's room to breathe here. Room to become who you're meant to be." Their arrival at the Jackson family ranch near the Big Horn Mountains came on a golden September afternoon. The main house, a substantial log structure with glass windows and a proper shingled roof, stood proudly on a rise overlooking expansive grazing lands. Several smaller cabins and outbuildings completed the settlement. Daniel Jackson, Darius's cousin, rode out to meet them, his weathered face breaking into a wide smile at the sight of his kinsman. "About time you showed up," he called. "We were starting to think you'd changed your mind about joining us." "Got sidetracked," Darius replied, dismounting to embrace his cousin. "But it was worth the delay." Introductions were made, and the party proceeded to the main house where Daniel's wife, Ella, visibly pregnant with their third child, welcomed them warmly. "Any friend of Darius is family to us," she declared, ushering Zara and Abigail inside. "And Lord knows, we need more women around here. I'm outnumbered 10-1 most days." The following weeks were a period of adjustment and integration. Zara and Abigail quickly made themselves useful. Zara's sewing skills were in high demand, while Abigail discovered a talent for teaching when she began helping with Daniel's 2 young children. Darius threw himself into ranch work, rising before dawn and returning after dusk, exhausted but satisfied. He and Zara found moments together when they could walks at sunset, quiet conversations by the fire after others had retired, occasional rides to nearby beauty spots on Sundays. Their relationship deepened gradually, built on mutual respect and growing understanding. Darius learned about Zara's childhood in Ohio before her family moved west, her dreams of someday owning her own dressmaking shop, her quiet strength that had sustained her through tragedy when both parents died of fever the previous year. In turn, Zara discovered Darius's history raised on a Texas cattle ranch, educated surprisingly well by a mother who had been a schoolteacher before marriage, driven north after his parents' deaths to seek connection with remaining family. "I never expected to find someone like you along the way," he told her one evening in late October as they sat on the porch, watching the spectacular sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. "I never expected to be found," Zara replied, leaning against his shoulder. Her hair had grown enough to curl softly around her face, framing her features in a way that Darius found endlessly captivating. "It suits you," he said, touching a wayward strand. "The short hair makes your eyes even more striking." Zara smiled. "I've grown to like it. It reminds me that sometimes what seems like punishment can become freedom instead." As winter approached, bringing the first dusting of snow to the mountain peaks, Darius completed work on a small cabin a short distance from the main house. Though he never explicitly stated its purpose, everyone understood it was being prepared for his future with Zara. On a crisp November morning, he asked her to accompany him to a ridge overlooking the ranch. The view was breathtaking. The valley spread below them, the buildings looking like toys in the vast landscape. "This is what I wanted to show you," Darius said, gesturing to the panorama. "Everything you can see to the north ridge belongs to the family. Daniel has offered me the eastern section to develop as my own." "It's magnificent," Zara breathed, taking in the scope of it. "It could be ours," Darius said quietly, "if you wanted it to be." Zara turned to him, heart pounding. "Are you asking?" Darius took her hands in his. "I'm asking if you'll marry me, Zara. I know it hasn't been long, but I've never been more certain of anything." Tears filled Zara's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." The kiss that sealed their engagement was interrupted by whoops and cheers. They turned to find Daniel, Ella, Abigail, and several ranch hands watching from a discreet distance. "About time," Daniel called. "I was beginning to think my cousin had lost his nerve." Ella rushed forward to embrace Zara. "Welcome to the family officially." The wedding took place on Christmas Day, in the main house decorated with pine boughs and red berries. The local minister rode out specially for the occasion, and neighboring ranchers traveled through snow to attend the celebration. Zara wore a dress she had made herself, cream-colored wool with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Her hair, now grown to chin length, was adorned with a single sprig of holly. As she spoke her vows, she marveled at how differently her life had turned out than she could possibly have imagined 6 months earlier. Darius, standing tall and proud in a new shirt and vest, looked at his bride with undisguised adoration. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, his kiss conveyed everything words could not: gratitude, promise, and abiding love. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music, dancing, and plenty of good food. As the hour grew late, the newlyweds slipped away to their cabin, now fully furnished and welcoming, with a fire blazing in the stone hearth. "Mrs. Jackson," Darius said with quiet reverence as he closed the door behind them, "I still can't quite believe you're my wife." Zara moved into his embrace. "Believe it, I'm exactly where I want to be." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, Zara traced the line of Darius's jaw with gentle fingers. "Do you ever think about how strange it is that something so wonderful came from something so terrible? If Hammond hadn't ordered my hair cut off, if you hadn't been there that day." "I've thought about it," Darius admitted, "but I've come to believe that people who are meant to find each other will, one way or another." He kissed her forehead tenderly. "Though I'm glad I was there that day. I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd ridden past." "My hero," Zara murmured, only half teasing. "No," Darius contradicted gently. "You were already saving yourself and Abigail by standing up to Hammond. I just offered a horse and some company for the journey." Spring brought new beginnings to the Jackson Ranch. Ella delivered a healthy baby girl in March, named Rose after Darius's mother. Abigail, flourishing in her new environment, accepted a formal position as governess to the Jackson children, and began corresponding with a young surveyor who had visited the ranch during the winter. And in April, Zara shared her own news with Darius as they planted a vegetable garden behind their cabin. "I think we'll need to expand this garden next year," she said casually. "We'll have another mouth to feed by then." Darius paused, hoe in mid-air, as understanding dawned on his face. "Are you saying?" Zara nodded, her eyes shining. "Around October, the doctor thinks." The hoe fell forgotten as Darius swept her into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "Careful, I'm in a delicate condition, remember." He set her down gently but kept his arms around her. "A baby," he marveled. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Zara asked, though his radiant expression answered the question. "Beyond happy," Darius assured her. "I never dared dream my life could be this full." As the months passed, Zara's body changed, her slender frame softening with the new life growing within. Darius watched these changes with wonder and increasing protectiveness, finding new beauty in his wife with each passing day. They received occasional news from Nebraska. Deputy Foster wrote to inform them that Hammond had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for his crimes. Empire City had elected a new mayor, Mrs. Whitley's husband, of all people, and was slowly recovering from Hammond's corrupt influence. "You ever regret leaving?" Darius asked one evening as Zara read Foster's latest letter aloud. Zara considered the question seriously. "I miss certain things. The familiarity of the place I grew up, some of the people." She set the letter aside and took his hand, placing it on her rounded belly where their child moved vigorously. "But no, I don't regret leaving. Everything that matters most to me is here." Their daughter, Elizabeth Zara Jackson, arrived on a stormy October night with Ella and Abigail assisting in the difficult delivery. When Darius was finally allowed to enter the bedroom, he found Zara exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. "Come meet your daughter," she invited softly. Darius approached almost reverently, his large frame seeming suddenly awkward as he perched carefully on the edge of the bed. When Zara placed the infant in his arms, his expression of awe and terror made her laugh despite her exhaustion. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the downy dark hair that covered the baby's head. "She has your eyes," Zara observed, "and hopefully your steady nature." Darius looked from his daughter to his wife, overcome with emotion. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under the combined efforts of the extended Jackson family. Darius proved to be an innovative rancher, introducing new breeding stock that improved their herds. Zara, once Elizabeth was old enough, opened a small dressmaking business that served the growing community of ranchers and townspeople in the region. Abigail eventually married her surveyor and moved to the newly established town 20 miles away, though she visited often. 2 more children joined the family: Robert Daniel in 1879 and Sarah Grace in 1883, completing their family circle. Through it all, through the blizzards that threatened their livestock and the drought years that tested their resilience, through children's illnesses and the normal strains of building a life together, the bond between Zara and Darius only strengthened. On their 10th anniversary, Darius presented Zara with a gift, a framed daguerreotype of their family, professionally taken during a trip to Cheyenne. Zara, now 34, stood proudly beside her husband, her hair styled fashionably but still relatively short, a personal choice she had maintained through the years. Their 3 children arranged around them, they presented the image of frontier prosperity and contentment. "Who would have thought," Zara mused as they admired the picture, "that the most humiliating moment of my life would lead to all this happiness?" Darius drew her close. "I told you then, and I'll say it again, your beauty could never be dimmed, not by Hammond, not by anything life throws our way." "Even all these gray hairs," she teased, pointing to the silver strands now mingling with the brown. "Especially those," Darius insisted, his own hair similarly showing signs of age. "They're evidence of a life well lived." Later that night, after the children were asleep, they sat together on the porch of their home, no longer the small cabin but a proper house built as their family grew. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Zara asked, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. "When you helped me onto your horse." "I said a lot of things," Darius recalled. "Most of them probably foolhardy, considering we had an angry mob at our backs." "You said my beauty could never be dimmed," Zara reminded him. "At the time, I thought you were just being kind to a distressed woman." "I meant every word," Darius assured her, taking her hand in his. "Though I had no idea then just how beautiful your spirit would prove to be over the years." As they sat together watching the stars emerge above the Wyoming mountains, Zara reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. What had begun as an act of cruelty had ultimately led her to the deepest joy. She had ever known a life built on love, respect, and the courage to begin again. "I love you, Darius Jackson," she said softly, the words no less meaningful for having been spoken countless times over their years together. "And I love you, Zara Jackson," he replied, his voice carrying the absolute certainty that had been his hallmark from the beginning. "Until the stars fall from the sky,"